Annyeonghaseyo, this is meowmurai. Let's continue our game of Despera Drops running on Nintendo Switch 2.
世界の果てまで逃げてみせる。
では参りましょうか。これで問題ありませんか？これで問題ありませんか？
ムカつく。そういうところだよ。だから嫌いなんだ。だから僕は勝たなきゃいけなかったんだ。お前より使えるって証明しなきゃ。プロフェータより優れてるってチャンセラーに知ってもらわなきゃいけないんだよ。
Okay, do you have your own voice?
難しいことは任せたからね。
You are also so loud. So loud. I don't know if he'd have his own. I don't know if he's a regular enough character where they would give him his own meter. Oh, I guess they did give him one. Yeah.
コンサートマスターであるこの僕に逆らおうだなんて。
I haven't even seen you.
コンサート。どういうこと？チャンセラーが言ったんだ。本当はプロフェータをコンサートマスターに育てるつもりだったって。でもぶっ壊れて使い物にならなくなったからって僕を選んでくれたんだ。
Chancellor wanted to train Profeta to become his concert master, but Profeta was broken? If Sally had remained as Udia, if the original Sally hadn't died and Udia hadn't been broken, they would have been chosen as Crown's concert master. My mind went right back to the list of Crown's sacrificial pawns, the one Sally found. The list included all sorts, chefs, directors, cafe workers, designers, pastors, teachers, writers, programmers, and so on. Chancellor had used that list to pluck out people he could use for his own malicious designs.
本当はね、彼らの掲げる理想は私たち EU とあまり変わりはないんですよ。ただ一点を除いて。でもその一点はあまりに大きい違いだったわ。クラウンと EU では理想のために選ぶ手段があまりにも違いすぎた。
Even if their cause was a noble one, that was no justification to use people and cast them aside as they pleased. Whether the person being used wanted it or not, it felt wrong.
僕はポンコツのプロフェータとは違う。まだできるってとこを見せてやるんだ。
He felt inferior to Profeta. He craved the limelight, hoping to be recognized. Nevertheless, he wouldn't feel that way if it weren't for Crown.
ユリアン君。
He bristled when I called out to him, lashing out.
僕を憐れむな。
Having picked up on my sympathy with his keen senses, Julian glared daggers at me.
僕は大人だ。子供扱いするなよ。
You're definitely not an adult. He was already half crying. In his anguish, he chucked his keyboard and a mug at us. Julian was practically throwing a tantrum. He reminded me of the helpless boy who destroyed his monitors when his sister died. The mug hit the wall and fell to the floor, shattering to pieces. Ignoring the broken mug, Sally walked toward Julian.
やだ、近づいてくるなよ。やだ、僕はまだやれる。やった。
Sally grabbed Julian's hands, twisted them around, nudged him against the table, and gave his head a smack.
はい、タッチ。これでサリーの勝ちだね。
だよ、なんでやめろよ。離せ。
Julian desperately resisted, but he was no match for Sally.
ハッカーも体力勝負だしね。ちゃんと鍛えてる？護衛に全部任せるんじゃなくてさ。
Chuckling, Sally held Julian down with one hand and worked on the computer with the other.
無駄だよ。この端末は全部僕専用に作られてて。
はい、解除。
Sally was working one-handed, but it hadn't slowed them down one bit. They managed to log into Julian's computer in no time. The screen switched to one that Constant Master must have used on a regular basis, including live feeds from the hotel. Removing what seemed like a protection of some sort, Sally pressed the transmission button.
制圧完了です。爆弾は解除したよ。警察の突入と人質の保護をお願いします。
The crowd was clearly confused by the announcement. When police rushed into the lobby and no explosions followed, everyone visibly relaxed. Some let themselves get whisked away in a daze, while others jumped for joy at the ability to reunite with their loved ones. Everything played out on screen. Once the hostages were safely evacuated, Sally and I exchanged relieved smiles.
じゃあここからが本題だよ。お姉ちゃん、ユリアンを捕まえといて。
I nodded as Sally shoved the young boy in my direction.
もっと丁寧に扱えよ。
ごめんね、痛かった。
I was at a bit of a loss, but I grabbed Julian from behind and made sure he couldn't run away. Now that I held him, I could tell how young he was. As I held Julian back, Sally took a seat and began working on something in earnest.
何しようとしてるんだよ。
そんなの一つしかないでしょ。お姉ちゃんを守るためにクラウンの秘密を秘密じゃなくしちゃうんだよ。
That was always our goal, to drag the enigmatic org's plans into the light, spread them all around the world, and lay their secrets bare. It was what we were after all this time, their criminal history, the reason they had used us, and more. That was why we'd come so far. One after another, Sally peeled away the layers of security protecting the data.
嘘だ。なんでこんな僕以外のやつが PC に触っても操作できないようにしてあるのに。
サリーを誰だと思ってんの？プロフェータだよ。っていうか、君がありがたそうに最終防壁に使ってるこのセキュリティシステムってサリーが5年前に作ったダミーのプログラムだからね。
おい、嘘だろ。それって今でも世界中のハッカーが信用してるし、そもそも5年前ってお前ガキじゃないか。
ま、今の君よりは確かにガキだったかもね。それは認めるよ。と。
Sally managed to dig up the org chart, something they hadn't been able to do when they hacked in from outside. This time around, we could access Crown's confidential information. We would soon discover the true identities of Chancellor and Monarch.
ダメだ。
The moment he saw the screen, Julian went pale. He writhed to escape my hold.
そこは僕にもアクセス権がないんだ。チャンセラークラスの幹部以外がアクセスしようとしたらこの部屋ごと爆破される。
It was too late. Sally had already hit the access button. Immediately, an ominous sound akin to shutters closing echoed from outside the room.
何？勝手にアクセスしようとすると機密保持のためにこのフロアに仕掛けられた爆弾が即座に起動するようになってるんだよ。
もうまた爆弾って。サリーなんかよりカミュ君でもスカウトした方がいいんじゃないの？
起爆装置が作動した。早く逃げないとこの部屋が爆発する。
I was stunned. Julian used this chance to wrest free of my grasp. He ran to the door and tried to escape. Except it was already locked. The door wouldn't budge, and the security shutters blocked all possible exits. We had no way out of here.
なんでそんなこと。当たり前じゃん。クラウンは秘密結社なんだよ。
Nothing about this was obvious, or even normal for that matter. They made this young boy hack for them, and when they deemed him no longer useful, they took his guards. If we sought their secrets, they'd bomb the evidence. No sane person would go to such lengths. An error message popped up on every monitor in the room, followed by a blaring alarm.
わお、機密保持プログラムが起動してカウントダウン始まったし。何この画面ちょっとかっこいい。
Despite the terrifying noise, Sally didn't budge from the computer. Glaring at the screen, they typed away at lightning speed.
何が起きてるの？ PC 内のデータ消去が始まってるんだよ。機密データにアクセスされる前に全部のデータを消しちゃうつもりだ。ねえ、そんなことより起爆装置のカウントダウンをなんとかしてくれよ。もう40秒しかない。
Red numbers on the monitor ticked down to our doom. Ignoring the countdown, Sally hammered the keyboard harder and faster.
何してるんだよ。見ろよ、爆弾の起爆装置が作動してんだよ。なんでそっち止める前に機密保持プログラムを止めようとしてんだよ。
データの消去なんてさせない。ミカの自由がこの秘密の中にあるんだ。
秘密なんてどうでもいいじゃん。死んだら全部終わりなんだよ。
終わんないよ。
Their eyes were fixed firmly on the monitor, like a hawk locked onto its prey. Profeta was fighting to gain our freedom, to spread Crown secrets and seize the future. Their declaration of "it's not over" held so much power. I believed they would see this through.
爆弾の解除しないでデータ拡散させる方を優先するなんて頭おかしいよ。ねえお姉さん、あいつを止めてよ。爆弾を解除させてよ。ねえ、死ぬのが怖くないの？
もちろん死ぬのは怖いよ。でも
They said this wasn't the end. I smiled, trusting their words. Meanwhile, Julian was so stunned that he stepped away from us.
狂ってるよ。こんな二人に任せてたら死んじゃうよ。こうなったら僕がやるしかないじゃん。
Julian took a seat in front of what appeared to be a smaller secondary computer and started working to stop the explosion.
やだやだやだやだ。まだ僕は知りたくない。やだよ。まだゲームに勝ってないんだ。
よし。
It was at that moment that the word "success" appeared on Sally's monitor. At last, Sally had uncovered the confidential data. They immediately released it all over the world. As everything went public, I took a closer look. Just what had the org worked so hard to hide? Crown secrets, Heilinger, Queen, everything was part of a plan to unite Europe as one. Sacrifices were offered. There was a plot to kill Monarch. The faces of 6 criminals were also on the hit list. Ash, Hamiel, Rami, Gib, Kamu, and Sally. An order had been given to silence those 6 people. Julian's scream brought me back to reality. We were all out of time. Only 1 second remained before the bomb would explode. And actually, let me grab something to drink. Hold on. In that brief second, I numbly glanced at the number and thought, Are we going to die? The countdown reached 0, but nothing happened.
あれ
Julian, who was tearfully clutching a cushion over his head, looked up.
なんで爆発が起きないの？
そんなの当然じゃん。大切な人が一緒にいるのにデータなんて優先するわけないでしょ。
Sally flashed a cocky smile and stuck out their tongue.
起爆装置の解除なんて最初の14秒で終わらせたよ。見てなかったの？
そんな。
Julian fell off his chair. He looked up at the ceiling in a daze, muttering to himself.
今日のところは僕の負けだ。
After acknowledging his defeat, Julian passed out. It was then that I heard the sound of a helicopter approaching, along with a voice in my earpiece.
はい無事です。サリーも私も。
何よりだ。レベッカから報道ヘリを借りて迎えに来た。そのまま屋上へ出てきてくれ。
了解だよ。
We unlocked the security shutter and jumped out to the connecting terrace from the room. Oh, I guess we're going to leave the kid. Warm moonlight greeted us once we made it to the rooftop. A cool breeze from overhead caressed our cheeks. I could hear police rushing inside. Inspector Dulce and Officer Noel were probably right there with them. That meant Julian had already been secured. We ran, believing everything would be all right. We headed straight to the people who'd come to save us, the people who are the people we trusted most. A few weeks had passed since the incident at the hotel. Italy, Milan, September 2nd, 2028, 1306 Saturday, Piazza del Duomo.
久しぶりの外だ。
Sally and I were enjoying our first outing in a while. Back in the hotel that night, Sally had brought part of Crown's master plan to light. While we hadn't been able to expose everything, unfavorable reports about Crown popped up all over the world. They included the Org's continued exploitation of criminals, the number of victims during the Supreme Council incident, and the names of their accomplices. This information clearly put them at a disadvantage and could be used to weaken them. Everything was just as the Supreme Council president had intended. Julian, one of the executives, had been arrested. He was under strict supervision to prevent Crown from assassinating him. Footage of the perpetrator behind an unsolved murder in Rome was among the data we discovered. With the real culprit identified, I was cleared of my murder charge. After a long, arduous battle, the accusation against me had been proven false. A lot of things happened after that. Rebecca did massive coverage on how I was falsely accused.
それでは次はローマのホテルで起きた殺人事件についてのニュースです。
Rebecca calmly revealed the real culprit and reported on my bogus charge over and over again. Thanks to that, my name had been removed from the wanted list. To this day, I still had no idea why Crown was after me in the first place, and the crimes I'd committed on the run didn't exactly disappear. Hence, I was under Europol's custody and protected as a primary witness.
ということで、しばらくはここにいてもらおう。
信用できる捜査官が順番で監視につくから。あとは話した通りによろしくね。
Inspector Dulce and Officer Noel came to check on me every once in a while. There was also a notice from President Lin saying that this case would be handled by Europol instead of the police. She probably did that to protect me from Crown. As for Sally, because they were highly endorsed by President Lin, it was decided that they were to be partially detained at Europol. Their plea bargain had been accepted. They would be cooperating with Europol using their hacking skills to avoid a prison sentence. I heard that both Inspector Dulce and Officer Noel supported this deal. Thanks to the recommendation from cybercrime expert Alphonse Noel, the authorities came to a swift decision about how to deal with us. Equipment was brought to the condo where we were staying, and Sally helped Europol with their investigations every single day.
相変わらず手際がいいね。
ノエル君の手際が悪いだけじゃない？
大人を侮ってるとそのうち痛い目見るからね。
うわー、大人げない。
The two of them made a good team as they gathered various information. After our companions came to rescue us in the news helicopter, they left us in Europol's hands and vanished. They never reached out. Their traces and sightings also ceased, as if they'd been completely wiped off the map. It was all because of Sally, who was now a cybersecurity advisor for Europol, secretly erasing their tracks. Sometimes Sally would show me surveillance footage of them on the sly.
ほら見て、今はみんなギリシャにいるみたい。ハミーくんなんて完全にセレブじゃんこれ。
There was footage of Hamil lying on the beach with sunglasses on, Rami eating junk food, and Kamu enjoying ice cream. Sally showed me records of the others having the time of their lives, then discreetly deleted them.
いいのかな、こんなことして。
サリーがいないとみんな危なっかしいからね。バレて怒られるのはサリー一人で十分。
Sally committed a small crime, knowing full well she wasn't supposed to do it. If the authorities found out, would they forgive me for looking the other way? The game of tag between our friends and the police continued to this day, a crime drama that would eventually come to an end. We did what we could to ensure that if they were arrested one day, Crown wouldn't be able to reach them. We made excuses, telling ourselves that once Crown was excised from the justice system, they could atone for their crimes legally. And that was how Sally and I spent our time. To pay for all the crimes Sally and I had committed while on the run, we continued to fight Crown behind the scenes. While I couldn't exactly say my ordinary life had returned, I was no longer a fugitive. True normalcy seemed far out of reach, but I had no complaints with Sally by my side. Summer was nearly over, yet the lingering heat was still severe, and the sunlight in Milan was painfully bright.
ほら、ジェラート食べよう。今日はあっちのお店で食べたいなって思っててさ。
Sally laughed and ran ahead of me. Their smile was so broad, without a trace of the sadness and pain they'd endured.
サリー、そんな走ったら転んじゃうよ。
平気だもん。ずっと部屋の中にいたから動きたくってしょうがないんだ。
Sally seemed to be smiling more openly and frequently these days. A smile rose to my own lips as I watched them, until they came and linked their arm with mine.
何考えてたの？
サリーも初めて出会った時から変わったなって思ってたの。
そう？
うん。
それを言うならミカもだよ。
そう？
前より大人っぽくなった。だから一緒にいるとちょっとドキドキしちゃうかな。
They didn't seem to realize that their bashful smile made me nervous. My heart skipped a beat. Sally had matured too. I felt like they'd grown a little taller compared to me when we met.
でもできれば今日ぐらいはミカと二人っきりでデートしたかったな。
Sally pouted, their eyes sliding over to the officer monitoring us. Despite Sally's request to go out, they couldn't simply let us roam free. They made an exception today as long as we had our escort.
でも邪魔しないように気を使って離れててくれるし、いてくれた方が安心できるでしょ。
それってサリーじゃ頼りないってこと？
頼りないというより、私たち二人じゃクラウンに襲われても逃げきれないでしょ。
それが頼りないって意味だと思うんだけどな。
Sally went from pouting to a full-on sulk. I didn't really care who was with us, but given our situation, we were bound to have company. Sally studied me for a moment. Then they chuckled, their eyes clinking into crescent moons. Their eyes exuded a mysterious allure as they peered at me. Their matching light purple earrings reflected the sunshine of these dwindling summer days.
あのさ、だからっていうのも変だけど、今日はいつもと違うことをしてみたいんだ。付き合ってもらってもいい？
うん、いいけど。
I nodded, wondering what they meant by something different. The place Sally brought me to was a boutique. It wasn't all that unusual, though it had been some time since we last visited one. Was this the different thing they wanted to do?
じゃあこれとこれとこれで試着してくるね。
Sally slipped into a fitting room with clothes in hand, then closed the curtain. What kind of clothes did they pick? Usually Sally sounded so giddy and gleeful as they tried things on in the fitting room, but today they were much quieter. All I heard was muffled groaning.
これ似合うのかな。てか恥ずかしいような。
サリー、何か困ってる？あ、もしかしてサイズが合わなかったとか？
大丈夫なんだけど、恥ずかしいっていうか、やっぱなんか変じゃないかって不安になって。でもさ、安心してもらいたいから。
安心？
二人っきりでも出歩いて平気だよってミカに思ってもらいたいんだ。だから入ってきて。
A hand shot out from the curtain and pulled me into the fitting room. Sally gazed at me, holding me close. They looked different than usual. The Sally in front of me wore men's clothing. I was lost for words, not knowing whether to call him Sally or Udia. They chuckled shyly at me.
どう？変じゃないかな。
They seemed both youthful and mature, boyish and girlish all at once. I was absolutely captivated by their seductive, enigmatic charm.
すごく似合ってる。
よかった。
Their smile and gaze were so gentle. Had Udia looked at Sally with such kindness, or was there even more at play? Sally beamed, their eyes shimmering with shades of a twilight beyond the dusk or dawn.
これなら安心できるかな。サリーでもミカを守れるんだって信じてもらえる？
Extending their hand, Sally softly caressed my cheek. Being only a hair's breadth from them made me acutely aware of our differences. They really had grown taller. The contours of their face seemed more mature than before, approving their growth. My heart hammered at seeing how this sapling had begun to blossom.
サリーはいつまでもサリーだよ。でもこれからは背も高くなって今までのサリーとは変わっちゃうかもしれない。分かってるのにまだ少しだけ怖いんだ。サリーがサリーじゃなくなるのが。自分がどんな風に変わるのか不安なんだ。でもいつかはミカにふさわしい自分を見つけるから。それまではもう少しだけお姉ちゃんのことが大好きなサリーのままでいさせて。
This person was about to break out of their shell. They watched me, clearly anxious about change and afraid to move on. They were neither a boy nor a girl. They were ambiguous, timid, and yet so lovely. I smiled and nodded at Sally.
もちろんだよ。どんな風に変わっても怖がらないで。私が一緒にいたいのはあなただから。
ミカ。
Soft lips brushed against mine. Huh? The fleeting gesture caught me by surprise, and Sally smiled mischievously at me. A kiss. It was a kiss. I knew that, yet I couldn't say a word. It was such a short kiss, almost like a greeting. I could even brush it off and pretend I was imagining things.
あの
イタリア風の挨拶だよ。なんてね。
They made it sound like that kiss was no different than eating pasta or gelato, yet the hint of a blush lingered on their cheeks. Using their Italian heritage as an excuse, they acted like it was nothing, all while flushing pink.
あのさ。
Their serious, misty eyes locked onto mine.
ミカはサリーのこと好き？
It was just like the question they'd asked me before. I'd completely dodged it back then, but now I felt like I could answer from the heart.
好きだよサリー。
With a big smile, I hugged them tightly, embracing everything they were and everything they could be. The kiss from before was probably the first kiss of someone who had climbed the ladder to adulthood. Italians had many words to call their lovers: tesoro, amore, principessa, and so on. Okay, I never heard of that one. Perhaps I'd learned more about that custom. It might not be so intimidating if Sally, Uria, was with me, because we promised to be together forever. We would cherish each other first and foremost till the end of our days. Once we were fugitives with no relation whatsoever. Now we acted like friends, like lovers, like family, like comrades in arms. This bond of ours might look strange or distorted to other people, but for us, we were each other's soft place to fall. Nothing could replace that.
サリー、ウリア、ずっと一緒にいようね。
They bent down, face drawing near once more. They were neither a boy nor a girl, neither an adult nor child. They were my beloved. If picturing our future together was enough to make them happy, then I would never ask for anything more. Rather than trying to force our joy to fit a mold, we would simply walk side by side as the people we were. No matter what the future had in store for us, I believed we could overcome it together. Okay. Happy ending. A Sally happy end. Yes, I don't know. I mean, I like that. I am really curious to see what the happy end for Rami is, since we got the bad end on our first playthrough. But you know, I think this is a nice way to wrap up Sally's story. It is really interesting. I think the translation for the game, especially, is really well done. I mean, all the pronouns were correct, and you know, they treated the material here, which would be fairly controversial. You know, even in Japanese visual novels, you know, in Japanese society, this would be you know, difficult material. And then to put it into a big mainstream game, well, I guess maybe it's not mainstream. Not that many people talk about this game. Yeah, I said I feel it's really well handled. I think, you know, the reveal and the secrets. I think, you know, I really felt like that journey was you know, tastefully and respectfully done. Again, that's a very hard thing to do, and certainly not all visual novels are as capable as this one. Again, I'm very surprised that this doesn't get talked about more. It's I said, it's so good. All the characters are really good. You know, I don't think any of the 7 characters which you could potentially hook up with, I don't think any of them are really that bad. You know, Hamiel obviously has a different kind of cut to his jib. I'm only hoping that the romance isn't the abusive kind, which we see in a lot of visual novels, you know, that are, you know, quote unquote targeted for you know, girls or women, but then they end up being just sort of like male fantasies. of how women want to be abused. Again, I hope it doesn't seem like that's going to be in here in any of the characters, but you never know. We've done a couple of these visual novels where it's like, okay, this part was written by a man. this is not some not some woman's perspective on what they want a real relationship to be. This is definitely what a guy would want a relationship to be, and it's kind of gross and disgusting when it's put in that that harmful type of abusive relationship. But again, this one's very respectable. I think it's I don't know. I just can't say enough about it. Unfortunately, you did get to experience this without the sound. The sound is part of the game, obviously, but the sound is also the thing that is heavily copyrighted. So, I just can't have the sound on. But if you're playing yourself, hopefully you pick this up for yourself. Definitely enjoy the music. It's also really well done, like the entire rest of the game. I mean, this is quite the follow-up from Our World Has Ended. Our World Has Ended, which was the previous Red game that was also available on the Switch. In fact, I think it launched pretty close to the launch of the original Switch. That was also a very good, complex story, but a little bit more comedic. And I think the plot took a lot longer to work through in Our World Has Ended. And here, like, the plot was like immediately interesting. Like, we really jumped into things. With the whole caper and the kidnappings and the attempts on the lives, I think this is just like, it's such a large step from Our World Has Ended, and Our World Has Ended I really liked. So, for me to like this one more is quite an accomplishment.
ありのままのサリーを受け止めてくれてありがとう。自分がどんな風に変わっちゃうのかはわからないけど、お姉ちゃんを好きな気持ちだけは絶対に変わらないからね。
Yeah, I'm super happy with that ending. I think it's good. As I said, it's difficult subject matter. Episode Sally. How long are these after stories? Okay, post-ending story. Attention, the extra content contains the post-ending story. Please enjoy it after clearing the happy end. Extra content does not allow you to save mid-game. You can use the backlog and flowchart features. The main character's name will be taken from the last time you played, which, we didn't change the name, so it's fine. Extra content. After story, Sally, honeymoon. Oh. It really is an after story. Sometimes these extra things are like... extra episodes are actually things that happen in between the game and not actually after the game. So this is kind of nice. On the night of our little private outing, we came home after finishing dinner and each took showers. Sally, who'd spent the day in a boy's outfit, returned to their usual getup. Italy, Milan, September 2nd, 2028, 22:33, Saturday, condo, living room. Oh, what an unusual time. Sitting down on a sofa, Sally let out a long exhale. They couldn't fully conceal their relief.
疲れた?
After I took a seat next to them, Sally smiled sheepishly and nodded.
ちょこっとだけ疲れたっていうより緊張したかな。
そうなの？
うん。今日一日男の子の格好をしていたから歩き方とかもいつもと違ったし。
Sally stole a glance at the paper bag left in one corner of the room. Within it were Udia's clothes. They'd purchased a few other outfits along with the one they'd worn today. At the time, they'd muttered that it may become necessary to have them, although that might have just been an excuse to do more shopping.
今日はありがとう。ミカとデートできて楽しかった。
本当？
うん。
Sally swung their legs anxiously, watching my reaction as they asked their next question.
ねえ、ミカ。 今日のサリーどうだった？あの格好変じゃなかった？
そんなことないよ。すごく似合ってた。
一緒にいて安心できた？
Safe.
これなら安心できるかな。サリーでもミカを守れるんだって信じてもらえる？
Honestly, I'd been restless just like Sally. Just the memory of that unfamiliar manly gaze they gave me got my heart fluttering again. After purchasing a selection of clothes at the boutique and continuing our date in the new getup, Sally had seemed like a boy the entire time. Even though we'd been together for so long, it felt almost as if I were with a stranger. But Sally had put their utmost effort into escorting me the entire day, so I gave them a reassuring nod.
安心して遊べたよ。
そっか。
Wearing an ambiguous smile, Sally looked down at their hands in their lap.
ならよかった。じゃあ次にまた外に出られるときはウリアになっていいかな。
うん。私はどっちの姿でも好きだよ。その日の気分で決めてもいいし、あなたのしたいようにしてほしいな。
I smiled at them, and a dusting of pink rose on Sally's cheeks as they stared at me.
ミカは優しいね。
そうかな。
うん。普通そんなこと言えないもん。どっちかがいいって言われると思ってたのにさ。正直自分でもまだどっちになりたいのかよくわからないんだ。どうしたいのかよくわかんない。
When they cast their eyes downward, Sally's earrings glistened under the moonlight, under the light. They placed a hand against their chest, hanging their head slightly. Their profile was startlingly captivating. Startlingly. Why is that such a hard word? The childlike happy-go-lucky girl that had been my companion until now was no longer anywhere to be found, even if they shared the same appearance.
でもまだずっとウリアでいるのは緊張する気がするんだ。だってミカが可愛すぎるから。
サリーも可愛いよ。
でもサリーの可愛さとミカの可愛さは違うんだよ。
Raising their face, Sally looked at me. Their heated gaze wavered. Our eyes locked, and both of us inhaled sharply. Recalling our kiss today, my throat grew parched. The question was on the tip of my tongue. What did that kiss mean? But I swallowed it and pressed my lips closed. Because Sally had glossed it over as a greeting, we were still ready to face the true meaning behind it, so both of us went quiet. Simultaneously, we turned away from each other. A little awkward, yeah. A pregnant silence stretched on for a long while. But without any distractions, I ended up remembering what happened even more vividly. My cheeks grew hot.
もう寝よっか。
そうだね。
After a night's sleep, we could return to our usual relationship. Thinking that, we prepared to retire for the night and climbed into bed like always. However, Italy, Milan, September 2nd, 2028, 22:58 Saturday, condo, bedroom. Is that the bed? There's no way you get a nice night's sleep off of that bed. In hindsight, maybe sticking to our usual habit of sharing the same bed wasn't the brightest idea. We'd been sleeping side by side every day in this large bed. It was routine. This was a piece of our daily life that we'd never questioned before, a perfectly obvious and conventional manner of resting. But maybe it wasn't so normal. It was a vestige of the time we were always running, sharing beds out of necessity, and ambiguous tension hung between us. What do I do? It felt awkward the moment I thought that Sally squeezed their eyes shut tightly and pulled the quilt completely over their head.
おやすみ。
Yeah. They turned over and faced their back to me. Sally felt as awkward as me, but being overly conscious of the situation would be embarrassing too.
おやすみ、サリー。
I whispered softly before I also turned over. But even with my back facing them, I could still feel their presence behind me, and I had trouble finding sleep. From then on, we worked hard so as not to dramatically change our lives. On the surface, we got along, but we were tiptoeing around each other with bated breath.
ねえねえ、今日の夕ご飯ね、サリーピザが食べたい。だから食べに行こうよ。
いいね。じゃあノエルさんたちも誘う？
あ、確かにノエル君いた方がおごってもらえるかも。サリー、あのミラノにある高いお店で食べてみたかったんだ。
Putting on the illusion of nonchalance, the two of us went about our days, taking care so that we wouldn't ever be alone with each other. Oh, okay. That sounds weird. We acted like the Sally and the Mika we were familiar with. We acted so that we wouldn't lose our relationship as teammates. Frightened that it might transform into something else, we pretended as if things hadn't changed since the time we were purely platonic friends. And we pulled it off splendidly, though our other teammates weren't around. We led a peaceful life as if the gang were still together. Until one night, we messed up. Our success had numbed our vigilance, and we wound up getting too close to each other. On that night, we were resting in bed per usual. I was nodding off when something bumped up against my forehead. I opened my eyes in a daze. Huh? I froze. Sally's face was much closer than I'd expected. Startled, I almost yelped, but I hurriedly shut my mouth. But that jostle was enough to rouse Sally, who tiredly lifted their eyelids to check on me. Something shifted in that moment, and neither of us could avert our gazes from the other any longer. Sally froze, their eyes fixed on my features. Their face flushed scarlet as they held their breath, opening and closing their mouth without a word. I could hear Sally swallowing audibly. A masculine Adam's apple bobbed in their throat.
ごめん。私こそごめんね。
I had to smile like I usually did, I told myself, but my body wouldn't listen to me anymore. The heat in my cheeks refused to die down. I knew that my face must be apple red. Because I had feelings for Sally, and this side of them made it hard for me to hide it. I tried so hard, yet I became careless recently. And so, now face to face with that irreversible fact, I was beyond the point of no return.
Mika.
Okay, well, why don't we stop it there? This is meowmurai. You've been watching Despera Drops running on Nintendo Switch 2. So we made it with Sally's happy end. A little bit of the of the extra story. I don't know if you folks really want like the rest of it. Certainly let me know. But I think next time, tomorrow, we'll start on. Ash's happy end journey, and see how that works out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.